Good evening, everybody. My name is Alexander Kaye. I am the director of the Schusterman Center for Israel Studies. I want to welcome you all to our conversation this evening. The mission of the Schusterman Center for Israel Studies is to advance knowledge and understanding of Israeli history, politics, society, and culture. Our goal is to provide scholars, students, and the general public with the diverse array of resources and information that they need to develop their own understanding of complex topics in this field. We hold a huge number of events in person and online, and I encourage all of you to check out our website, which includes an extensive archive of our past events and lots of information about what we have coming up. Talking about Israel is rarely straightforward, especially when it comes to the subject of the tragic conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. The past few months, though, have been particularly challenging. The scale of the suffering and trauma of Israelis and Palestinians, as well as others caught in the fighting, can make constructive, compassionate learning, communication, and action around this topic very difficult to cultivate, to say the least. We at the Schusterman Center believe that the best way forward is to create an environment in which it's possible to have honest, non-judgmental, informed conversations, deeply rooted in expert research, in which all experiences and perspectives are welcome. This is the only way that we can collectively tell the truth to each other and appreciate both the wonderfully diverse histories of the region and also our shared humanity, and to make good decisions for future generations. It's in this vein that we are bringing to you our three brilliant, brave, and accomplished speakers this evening, Khaled Awwad, Mikhael Manekin, and Pnina Pfeuffer. I'm going to introduce our speakers formally in just one moment. First, I need to express gratitude to a few people who made this event possible and to explain briefly how the evening will go. This conversation is the formal opening event of a conference which culminates our inaugural year of the Schusterman Center's new Institute for Advanced Israel Studies. For this special inaugural year of the Institute, which has been on the subject of Israeli democracy and its alternatives, we have been joined by a close institutional partner and co-sponsor, the Center for Jewish History in New York City. And we are very grateful to the Center for Jewish History and its director, Professor Gabriel Rosenfeld, for working together with us on this important initiative. Tonight was made possible only by the exceptional commitment of the staff of the Schusterman Center. My close partner, our Senior Associate Director, Dr. Shana Weiss, our Assistant Director who came on board only a few months or maybe 55 years ago. It's been a very intense period of work. Mai Deweese, and the rest of our incredibly accomplished team. Karen Goodblatt, Wendy Schwartz, Mongchi Tian. Thank you all very, very much for your work. Now to our conversation. Our panelists and I will talk together for a period of time, roughly 45 minutes, I should say, and then we'll turn to questions from you, the audience. If you have a question, please write it on the note card that you were handed when you checked in. The note cards are going to be collected periodically by our staff, and then they are going to be collated by one of the fellows of our Advanced Institute, Dr. Dahlia Scheindlin. Dr. Scheindlin is a political scientist, a public opinion expert, and a researcher at the Century Foundation. She is a brilliant and accomplished scholar, and if you have read anything about Israel in any newspaper in the past decade or more, you will certainly have seen her quoted. But despite her accomplishment, please make things easy for her by writing clearly because she's going to have to collate all of your questions and somehow put them together and ask as many of them as she possibly can in a relatively short period of time to our panelists. And please submit any questions that you have by, let's say, 5:15 at the latest, to give them at least a chance to be asked. So now to our panelists. Let me formally introduce them. Khaled Awwad. First of all, I want to especially thank Khaled, who's come from Bethlehem for this conversation during the final days of Ramadan, which is a very difficult trip to make, especially without eating, and we're very grateful to you, Khaled. Khaled is among the foremost figures in the Palestinian community working toward peace and reconciliation between Palestinians and Israelis. He's been part of many groundbreaking organizations and is the Palestinian co-director of Roots, also in Hebrew Shorashim, Arabic Judor, a grassroots movement of understanding, nonviolence, and transformation among Israelis and Palestinians. He's been awarded various international prizes, including the UNESCO Madanjit Singh Prize for the Promotion of Nonviolence and Tolerance in 2011, and was named one of the 500 most influential Muslims in 2010 by the Royal Islamic Strategic Studies Center. Mikhael Manekin, to Khaled's left, is the co-founder and director of the Alliance Fellowship Program, an Arab-Jewish political network in Israel devoted to promoting civic equality. Mikhael is the former executive director of Breaking the Silence, an Israeli military veterans group focused on educating the public about the results of military control of the West Bank and Gaza. He is also a co-founder and one of the leaders of the Faithful Left, Smola Emuni, a movement of religious Jews promoting equality through the language of Jewish faith and tradition. His book, End of Days, Ethics, Tradition and Power in Israel, which was published in Hebrew in 2021 and just came out in English this year, is something that I strongly recommend that everybody take a careful look at. It's relatively short, exceptionally powerful, and it's published by Academic Studies Press in English just now. Mikhael is currently a Religion and Public Life Fellow in Conflict and Peace at Harvard University School of Divinity and a Visiting Research Fellow at the Kogod Research Center at the Shalom Hartman Institute. And finally, Pnina Pfeuffer is a Haredi feminist and human rights activist. Trained in organizational behavior and public policy, Pnina founded and manages the organization Haredim Achadashim, the New Haredim, a grassroots organization that coalesces a network of over 90 community organizers, activists, and leaders to strengthen democratic and progressive values. She served as a board member for O2O2, a joint Israeli-Palestinian organization. She's a liaison for Ir Amin, an organization I guess translates to a city of peoples or a city of nations, where she initiated an annual peace-building program for the Haredi, the Jewish Orthodox community, to learn about issues facing the largely Arab-Palestinian East Jerusalem community. So now I'm going to ask some questions of our panelists, and I apologize to them several times in advance, but I have to do it publicly, that I'm asking them to give 5-minute answers, which should really be several hours long, and I've told them that I'm going to be mean and cut them off because I want to hear as much from them as possible. If it looks like I'm being really nasty, they know it's coming. I hate this part of my job, but it's necessary. But they've been very wonderful in allowing me to do it. So let's start with asking each of our panelists in turn. Just if you could please give our audience, we'll start with Khaled, please, and then move down the line. Just give people a brief overview of your work as members of religious communities involved in peace activism between Palestinians and Israeli Jews, and really tell us about a key event in your lives, maybe an important moment, an important story or memory that really set you on the path to the work that you find so important today.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm happy to meet you during this holy month of Ramadan. I'm fasting now, and We are breaking the fast at 7:17 today. Yesterday, 7:16. My name is Khaled Abu Awwad. I'm a Palestinian. I'm a Muslim. I'm a religious Muslim person. I believe in my God and in my holy book, the Quran. And now I've been, the last 22 years of my life, I've been busy to lead or to achieve a kind of change in our region. The Israeli people call it Israel, we call it Palestine. My God in the Holy Book call it the Holy Land. I love this name, the Holy Land. The Holy Land, we both live together in that Holy Land. I am from a village called Beit Umar nowadays. It's in the Hebron region. I'm a son of a refugee Palestinian family for 2 times, one in 1948, one in 1967. And in 2001, I became one of the founders of the Bereaved Family Forum, PCFF, together with an Israeli group that at that time we find the power of the family who lose one of their relevant and have been used to raise up the hatred between both of us. So we decide to do the opposite, to invest the power of our families, of our bereaved, to bring a peace and reconciliation between our two people. In 2006, I'm one of the founders of the Way Al-Tariq. Al-Tariq is a Palestinian movement that believe in change and believe that the change should start by a meeting between our two cultures, especially the youth. We target the youth. 2014, I'm one of the founders of Roots, Palestinian Israel Initiative, that tried to lead a process of reconciliation. You know, we signed a peace agreement in 1993, and we have been waiting to have peace. We thought that peace can be a signature of leaders in a piece of paper, and that's the wrongest idea or the wrongest thing that happened. Peace is a way of life. Peace is values inside me. Peace is how I'm looking to you, how I am feeling with you. Peace is more than this. Peace is education. Peace is many change in our life, basic things in our life. So I will stop here. I know we are limited in time. I will speak in my turn, but thank you. I hope we will have a good meeting today.
First I will say that it is very threatening when a Brandeis professor with a British accent tells us that he's going to be rude to a bunch of Israelis and Palestinians. Apologies. But either way, I'll try to make it 5 minutes. I've been very fortunate in the last 2 decades to be involved in anti-occupation activism. I will say that it has been part of my upbringing. I'm very fortunate to not have to rebel against my education, my parents. I grew up in a family which is both very religiously committed Orthodox and believes in equality. A lot of times people juxtapose that as I am this, but I am that. And I was raised to say I am this and I am that. I grew up in the Old City, in the Jewish Quarter, and I remember having conversations with my father when I started sort of being interested in my surroundings. He would always say, quote from the sages and then from Maimonides, "Heye ben hane'elavim velo ben ha'olvim," which means you'd rather be it's better to be of the offended and not of the offenders. And he would always joke that that makes you, that'll make me a good Jew and a bad Israeli. And I grew up with that sentiment very dear to me. That being said, even though I've been, again, very fortunate to be involved in organization thinking and acting upon the desire for equality, both civic and national, between Jews and Palestinians, the question of my sort of belief in that context was private till a couple of years ago. A lot of the folks who started Breaking the Silence come from religious backgrounds, but the conversation on religion in the political sphere is something that we didn't do often. The realization that something is happening and perhaps we need to discuss the question of religion more happened to me in the last couple of years for two, perhaps contradictory reasons, perhaps not. The first being actually among my community in the liberal left, the Jewish liberal left in Israel, which started perhaps for good reasons, a struggle against something called, or public campaign against something called, in Hebrew, hadatah, or in English, religification, the fear that religion is seeping into the public sphere. And anybody here who reads Haaretz in the last couple of years will probably be aware of that. And while I recognized their very deep fear of that process, it did force me to think, wait a minute, if everybody's so afraid of being religified, what does that mean about me, a religious person, who's sort of at the negative end of that spectrum? And when I would ask that to my friends and allies on the left, a lot of times I would get the answer, which is probably most frustrating, which is, oh no, we don't mean you. You're okay, we mean everybody else. On one hand. On the other hand, the feeling that something very dangerous is happening inside my own community. A growing extremism, a growing fascination with supremacy and with domination among religious people towards Palestinians. And the fact that I have my own children now, and they're older, and from their perspective, they're trying to figure out what does it mean to be an ethical person, a human being, and what they see around them from their own religious community is something which is, I mean, its roots existed very long ago, but has become deeper and, to my understanding, darker. So the question of how do you articulate a religious ethic in this time became more acute for me, both as somebody who's operating in left spaces, which are to some extent more secular, but also as somebody who lives in a religious context, which is becoming much more radical. So that's, I guess, my 5 minutes.
Hi. I actually had a conversation with Alex, before I came here, and we were sort of discussing what would be said on the panel and what kind of questions we were going to have. And it reminded me of, I was really trying to, it's a very hard question to answer why you do what you do. I don't know. I get asked all the time, and I don't really have, every time I give a different answer, that's the truth. And it's also sometimes different contexts. It could be, why are you a feminist? Why are you left-wing? Why are you Haredi? Why am I all these different identities? But now the question is why I'm involved in human rights and peace activism. And I remembered this story from the early 2000s. I was newly married. I was a regular young Haredi, woman, working in a religious college. And we had a carpool. And one day, the guy who did the car, I don't drive, so I was just go along. I didn't provide any services. But he went off to reserve duty, and he said he'd be back in 2 weeks, but he didn't come back in 2 weeks. I didn't notice. But when he came back, we realized he'd been gone for a while longer. And then on the way home, it was a drive from Jerusalem to Beit Shemesh, which was, I don't know, it was a time 40 minutes. So him and his friend were sitting up front, I was sitting in the back, and I was just listening in on the conversation, and his friend said, you said you'd be back after 2 weeks, and you were gone longer. What happened? So he said, you have to understand, I'm from an American Haredi background. My parents, I grew up in Israel, but my parents are American, which means nobody in my family has gone to the army, for better or worse. So I don't understand army lingo, which is part of like being Israeli. And he said, "Ayiti b'kalabush," which means army prison. And so his friend said, "Why?" So he said, "Because I was at a checkpoint, and I told all the Palestinians who were standing at the checkpoint to sort of, I don't know, like go on the ground. And then my officer saw me, and they brought me before a military court, and they put me in army jail for a week. Now, looking back at it, this is already a good situation. I think today the result would have been different. Like, I don't think he would have gone to army jail, but then he did. And then his friend said, "Why'd you do it?" And he said, "I don't know. I just felt like it. I was bored. I don't remember, some kind of a strange answer." And this was, and I kept thinking, like, I don't understand why he would do that. This wasn't like a political question for me. I just didn't understand, because he was like the boy next door, you know. He was studying engineering. He wasn't an extremist, like religious person. He was like, he grew up in central Israel in a city, Petah Tikva, like the most, what you would call normal, you know, normal, religious. His wife was a teacher. He was studying engineering, you know, went to the army, nothing. And he was so kind to me, you know. He always made sure to take me along for the ride, even though like I said, I didn't provide any services. And he wouldn't take money for gas, which I tried to pay. And I was like, how is this the same person? Like, these are two different people. I don't know this person who would just do such a thing. And there was a slogan at the time, I think it's still, you know, it's one of the famous, you know, like slogans of the peace movement, which is Akibush Mashchit, you know, the occupation corrupts. And I was not from that political ilk, and I was like, and that's what came into my head. And I sat there and I was like, and it wasn't like the next day I went to protest anything or something changed in my life. But when I look back at it, that's when I started, today it's very popular on social media to say educate yourself, but that's what I did. I started reading like history and just anything I could get my hands on, really. And it happened to be Tom Segev in the beginning. And I thought that because I was Haredi, I was uneducated. I was like, okay, I went to Haredi school, so they didn't teach me things, so I don't know. So I have to now I have to read a lot of books. But later I found out that that wasn't the case. So that's just sort of a story of how things started changing for me.
شكرا Pnina. Where's Yuda?
Always a question.
Okay. So I mentioned who I am, my name, everything, and also I mentioned that 22 years I am busy trying to do the maximum to bring peace between our two people. And this is not happening just like this. It's a story. It's part of the story of my life, my family. In 1987, we as a family, we called Awwad's family. We have been part of the first intifada against Israel. And every one of us have been arrested, especially our mother. Her name is Fatima, her nickname is Yusuf. She's very known in the Palestinian society everywhere. She passed away, Allah yarhamha. In 1993, when the first peace agreement signed between us and the Israel state, we as a family, we as a part of the Palestinian leadership, we as a refugee family support the agreement. And we trust our two leadership, the Palestinian leadership, the Israeli leadership. They will continue the negotiation until they bring us the peace. So this is what we believe at that time, until 2000. In the 16th of November 2000, when the Israel army killed my brother Yusuf, the first question that we ask, of course we ask who's killed him, what did he do, why, but the main question is where is the peace? This is not what we are waiting for. We are waiting to live in peace with each other. And after my brother had been killed, you know, in the Jewish culture, you sit for 7 days. In our culture, we sit for 3 days. So we sat for 3 days for Yusuf. And thousands of Palestinian people came to bring their condolences to me, to my family in Beit Umar. And we ended, after 1.5 months, a group of Jewish Israel people. They asked if they can come to visit us and to share us our pain. And our first reaction at that time is we refuse. We said they, it means all of them, all the Israel people, all the Jewish people are guilty. They killed my brother. So they killed my brother and they want to come to say we are sorry. We don't want to see, we don't want to hear, we don't want to listen to anyone, to meet with anyone from the other side. This is how we react after we lost my brother, Yusuf. Again and again, they send us a person, many people, to convince us to accept their visit until we accept, because they send us a message that we came with peace to you, we came to support you, we refuse what's happened to you about Awwad's family. So we said, okay, they can come. And when they came to my house in Beit Umar. They sit in my house. We start talking, we tell them the story of my brother Yusuf and how their soldier killed my brother. And I've seen a reaction that I didn't expect. I've seen most of them, their tears when they hear the story. And between me and myself, and I ask myself, are we enemy? Is this the Jewish Israel people? Or what's going on here? We finished to tell the story of my brother. And then this group, they have stories from their life, and they feel the needing to share us these stories. And one of the main stories that I hear that day is the story of a family from Talmud, a Jewish Israel family from Talmud. A 13, 14 years old daughter that one day went with her two girlfriends to Tel Aviv, to Dizengoff Center. It's a big market in Tel Aviv. And the Palestinian with a suicide bomber killed 3 of them and other innocent people in the market. The father and the mother of one of those girls have been part of the delegation, the group of families that came to my house. They tell us the story of their daughter, the first moment, and also the mother shared us with part of the diary of her little daughter while she had been alive. She wrote in her diary a lot of good things, sentences full of love to everyone in this world. And she mentioned a dream when it's going to be good between us and our Arab neighbors, and when we can visit each other without fear, without hatred. This is one of the dreams of this little innocent girl. The story of this girl challenged me as a Palestinian. I'm a Palestinian. Before that meeting, I'm standing in a place that we are right, they are wrong. We are the victim, they are guilty, they are the perpetrator, they are the bad people. Until I hear this story. This story, I find the things has changed. Like here, I feel myself as a Palestinian guilty in somewhere. What's going on here? I want to understand. So I took the story of this girl between me and myself to a deep analysis. I want to understand what's happened during this meeting. This little innocent Jewish Israeli girl, does she deserve to be killed? Why? What did she do? She went to the market, she went to celebrate, she went to do shopping, but for sure she didn't went there to fight anyone. And who killed her is a Palestinian. Why did he do that? I'm asking myself, I'm answering. He do that in the name of the Palestinian people, the Palestinian freedom, the Palestinian justice. I'm a Palestinian. Did he do that in my name? What's my opinion? What do I think about this? Do I accept that someone behaved like this in my name? Is the feeling that we are right give us the legitimacy to kill the people in front of us, no matter whom they are, just because they are from the other side? My answer to myself is one answer: no. I cannot accept that anyone behave like this in my name, in my right's name. This story, 2 minutes, this story lead to a serious discussion inside my family, with my brothers and sisters, with our mother. What this meeting do to us? And the conclusion, to make it sure, is that we are two people. We have a conflict between each other. We are fighting each other day and night. And every one of us tells the story of this conflict from his eyes, from his side. And he's standing in a place that I am innocent, the other one is guilty. I am okay, the other one is bad. Until we meet each other and listen to the story of each other. The moment that we do that, it's the moment that we look to the mirror. It's the moment that we recognize that our fact, our story, is only half of the story of the fact. The other half is on the other side. When we meet, when we listen to each other based on dignity and empathy, we connect the two half of the story. In the moment that we do that, we stop blaming only the other one and find ourselves innocent. We also find where we are guilty. What's our turn on what's going on around us? Because I think all of us in the Holy Land responsible, all of us, Palestinian and Israel, responsible about what's going on in our region. So, since that day, my family started to do what we are doing, and we will continue to do until the end of my life, at least. I hope that we will succeed to do the change.
So, for my next question, I'm going to start with Mikhael, because this is effectively the subject of your book. And then Pnina and Khaled, definitely feel free to, we'll go to you after Mikhael has answered. So I'm going to grossly generalize to say that when we look at peacemaking efforts internationally, nationally, over the past 20, 30 years when it comes to Israel and Palestine, again, to generalize, religious communities, religious parties have generally been sidelined in one way or another, I think. So when religious people are in the room in negotiations, the religious sensibilities of negotiators have to be kept out of the room, because, of course, negotiations have to be on the basis of kind of secular liberal principles. And worst case scenario, religious groups are seen as groups that are obstacles to peace and have to be somehow suppressed or managed or overcome in some kind of way. But I wonder if in your experiences, in your studies, in the way that you think about this, if religious studies, practices may have things have resources to offer for peacemaking initiatives, efforts, that perhaps secular, democratic, liberal initiatives may be lacking?
Wow.
In 30 seconds. No, I'm kidding. Mikhael.
So first, I will say, as somebody who, we're all romantic about our own communities, but I'd rather not be romantic about my community, at least in the beginning of this conversation. The baseline for me, subjectively, religious or not, for equality in the region is that everybody living in Israel, Palestine, in the Holy Land, has equality, both personal and collective, and has equal ownership of their state, whatever that may be, on every issue, including immigration, and including everything else. I don't want Palestinians to have anything less than me. I think that's unjust. And it doesn't, people can discuss that in different ways, and somebody can look at it from a secular humanistic framework, and somebody can look at it from a religious framework. But what's really important, to my understanding, is a very basic understanding of democracy, which is that everybody living in this space, which is currently de facto under Israel's control in various different elements, from the river to the sea, that everybody has equal ownership, again, both personal and collective, over their political entity in which they're at. I don't think it's, for me, that stems from my religious upbringing, but I'm completely aware of the fact that for other people it stems from their democratic humanistic upbringing, and that's great. And I'll be happy that equality is achieved, be it achieved with a verse in the end, or be it achieved without a verse in the end. The purpose is for equality, politically. For me, it's motivated by the fact that I think God is angered with us when we subjugate other people. And definitely the context of this current war in Gaza, I can speak for my people, or about my people, and from my understanding, I think our behavior isn't in line with our tradition, just to put it moderately, both in action and in justification of action. In terms of how, in terms of killing, in terms of displacement, in terms of hunger, and in terms of our internal justifications of that. The reason I'm not romantic is because I'm aware that currently the language of the Jewish religion is the most coherent justifier of what's happening, moral justifier of what's happening in Gaza, in the Jewish world, and it is also the most aggressive one. So I feel uncomfortable speaking romantically about the prospects of my religion in this context. That's not to say that I don't think there is a context in which the language of our faith can justify equality. It's definitely the tradition in which I was raised. But I think it will take a lot of work by people in communities who are interested in promoting that tradition. And the question about how that will come about is more of a question of action and of organization than of where things inevitably lead. I really do wish that when people close their eyes and imagined religious people in our region, they would imagine people of peace and of humility and of compassion and of mercy. I definitely think that's our tradition, to the extent that I understand Muslim tradition. And I think Jews should understand Muslim tradition, and Christian traditions and any other tradition. To the extent that I understand, I think we share very similar traditions in that regard. But I'm also aware that religious communities are susceptible to radicalism and to perceiving themselves as better than others. And that's an internal Jewish battle more than anything else. It's a battle about, I think, God versus idolatry. But to my understanding, I feel uncomfortable critiquing sort of secular left frameworks in that regard, because I don't think it's a question of us critiquing them, but more a question of different voices using their own languages to promote the same cause, which is civic and national, personal and collective freedom and dignity.
So I'm actually going to go to Pnina now. I'm going to maybe sharpen this question specifically for you. Mikhael effectively asked the question that I was going to ask, but let me just kind of phrase it in the way that I wanted to take it, which is, you did this already, but I wanted to make really sure that this conversation was not romantic and was really honest. Because we brought the three of you to speak to this audience, and your voices, I believe, are voices that should be amplified as loudly as they possibly could be. Like, everybody should hear your voices as much as possible. But the fact is that your voices and the kinds of voices that you represent are not the voices that are most commonly heard, at least in the American media and in the Israeli media. And I can't speak as authoritatively about the Palestinian media, but maybe Khaled, you can tell me if you think that that's correct as well. So let me start, Pnina, with you. Let's be being real, which is that you all speak from your experiences about how your lives, your experiences, your religious convictions have led you to these lives of activism that you lead. But from the outside, it certainly seems that you are highly exceptional in your communities, that to all appearances. So can you account for that exceptionalism? And how do you then talk to people inside your own communities? How do you do you try and convince people in your own families, in your own communities, of the direction that you have taken? How do you see the future going? Do you think you will prevail with your direction?
A lot of questions.
And I'm asking you all the questions not because I want you to answer all of them, but because I want to give you as many things that you can pick or choose from in the way that you want to take the direction of the conversation.
Okay. I want to say that when I started off being, I don't want to call it a peace activist, but for lack of a better term, being involved in like thinking about solutions or whatever, I was very much like the standard Zionist left. I didn't include my religious affiliations in that line of work. You know, I was like the Geneva, you know, all these regular, you know, security and how, you know, the Sudoku, how do we divide it and everybody gets their piece. And I didn't really, and I think I was also wary to include my religious beliefs and affiliations because it makes it much more complicated. Like, even as a religious person, I'll be honest, if we could remove the religious aspect of this conflict, it would be a lot simpler, it would be a lot easier. If it was just, you know, a matter of where to put the lines in the sand, it would be a lot easier. But the fact is that this conflict has every aspect that a conflict could possibly have, including a very deep religious one. That's just a fact. And trying to solve it just by, you know, liberal secular tools has not proved to be very successful. So I will say, and I will not romanticize, just like Mikhael did not romanticize his community. I come from the Khaledi community, but we do have something to offer that is, you can be religious and you can be patriotic, but it doesn't have to be enmeshed in your religion. Meaning, I consider myself a Zionist to So whatever that means to certain people, but I love my homeland. It's important to me. My roots are there. My daughter is the first child in my family and generation that's been born in the same place 2 generations in a row. She was born on Jerusalem Day. It means a lot to me. You know, my parents made Aliyah, like my mother. My father came along for the ride. But my mother's a Zionist. She made a conscious decision. She's not a refugee. She's an American, and she moved there after college. So I was raised with a very big appreciation for the fact that I am the child of a dream. We realized the dream, something that Jews prayed for many years, and that's part of my DNA. And yet, I'm a religious person, but I'm not a religious Zionist. I'm a religious Jew and a Zionist, and having those 2 identities not fully enmeshed, I think offers a way of looking at things that's better or less complicated for dealing with this conflict. Something that we see that the national religious community, by enmeshing the nationalism into their religiosity, has a very difficult time. You can't pull it apart, and then your whole religious identity is just land, and there's nothing else to offer. So it becomes way more complicated. I'm not saying you can change people's identity. I'm just saying maybe there's another aspect we could think about that's still very religious to counter it with. So that's, I think that's the idea I'd like to put forth here.
Just before we move to you, and this is your last chance to give questions in the audience. If you want questions for our panelists, just jot them down, send them to the end of your row, and someone will pick them up. This is your last chance to do that.
Yeah, I just asked to add, the fact that we're not romanticizing our communities, that doesn't mean that we're romanticizing secular communities as well. It's, we have this, Pnina and I are active in a lot of joint things, including being active in Hebron and co-resistant works with Palestinians, which tends to get fairly aggressive sometimes, and in groups where most of the people that are coming from religious or Haredi backgrounds. And we have this running joke where we could be running a protest or running an activity, and a secular Israeli, it'll be their first time ever at one of these events, and they'll come to somebody like us, and they'll say, "It's so nice to see somebody like you here." So we're not romanticizing, but it's not like there are 30 religious activists in Hebron and thousands of secular Israeli activists in Hebron. The truth of the matter is that the activist left in Israel, for a lot of reasons, in any culture, is very, very small. And if you actually go to grassroots territories work, which is hyper-political, you actually see a very complex and complicated community coming from a lot of different backgrounds. There is a very large community, a liberal community in Israel, which self-perceives itself as against occupation, as for liberal values. But in terms of people who are actually doing work, it's sadly a much smaller community and doesn't necessarily ultimately come from that milieu. So that goes in the religious secular divide, it goes in the Ashkenazi Mizrahi divide. I think there's a self-perception of a large community that sees itself as a beacon of liberal democracy. From my perspective, as somebody who's unromantic about my own community, I also think that if that community actually lived according to its self-prescribed standards, we'd be in a very different place today in Israel and in the West Bank and Gaza.
I want to ask something about categories. So, Pnina, I was reading an interview that you did with somebody. I won't say who. You were great, and the interviewer was actually great as well. But in the preamble, when they were talking about you, the person called you a person of faith, and I thought,
I'm so curious what this interview is. I have no idea.
That was it. That's the end. That's all I'm going to say about it. Because I don't know of any Haredi friend or a colleague, acquaintance that I've had. I don't think that anyone has ever described themselves as a person of faith. And in fact, it's kind of unusual for religious people I know to call themselves even religious people. Meaning that just to say, oh, I'm a religious person. It doesn't quite work. And in Hebrew, it kind of works in some contexts, but not in others. And in Arabic, it doesn't always fit. In other words, categories are normally imposed on people from people who are not part of the categories that are being created. And just to acknowledge, I'm guilty of that in this whole event, which we called, I think, religion and peacemaking. That was, part of the framing of this whole event. So I would love to ask you actually about categories. How do you conceive of the relationship between, and I'm going to use air quotes here, religion and politics in your work? Do those categories are those categories significant to you? Are they categories you use yourselves? Are they not particularly relevant to the work that you do? Do you have other categories that you use in your own work? I'll start. You're ready to answer, Pnina? Khaled hasn't spoken for a while. Khaled will start, then Pnina.
I want to read a chapter from the Quran. God says in the Holy Quran, in Surah Al-Isra, number 17, chapter 58. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإن من قرية إلا ونحن مهلكوها قبل يوم القيامة أو معذبوها عذابا شديدا كان ذلك في الكتاب مسطورا. In this chapter, in this sentence, God says that I will not leave one single village without destroying it or punish it before the judgment day. And it's looked like a joke. And for me, Khaled, as one who believes in God and believes in my religion, I asked my God, what do you have? What's your problem with the village? Why? Why you want to destroy the village? Listen, all of you. The village, the sport village, is people who deal with sport. The Olympic village. The fishing village is people who work on fishing. The agriculture village, people who work on agriculture. God doesn't mean exactly this. God says that the place where the people want to make it one color, one opinion, one religion, one style of life is a bad place. I will destroy it. The place where we don't accept each other. The opposite of this is the city from civilization, the place where we all together live. We accept the believer and the non-believer. We accept the Jewish people, the Islamic people, the Christian people, the believer people, the non-believer people, the farmers and the carpenter and all different kind of people. God says on this sentence that our happiness on this life by accepting each other and the different from us. I think in Israel, before the 7th of October, many of the Israel people demonstrate against those who try to make Israel a village by changing the law, by call it a Jewish state, whatever is it. Listen, the state of America, I have been in Europe and I have been here. I've seen the different culture here. I've seen how they are living all together, like a music, different, I don't know how to call it, but when you hear, you listen to something beautiful by this different culture, different kind and color of people all living together. This gave the state of America the life, and no one can win it. All the time that she accept this different culture on its land. Everywhere, we, the Muslim people, try to make our Islamic world a village, and we lose, and we will continue to lose all the time. We isolate ourselves because we want to make all the humanity Muslim by forcing them. We thought that we are the right, we have the right religion. While God says in the Holy Quran, 3 conditions for any good person in the eyes of God: to believe in one God, to believe in the judgment days, and to do good with other people. These are 3 conditions. He didn't mention to pray, to fast, to anything like this. He mentioned 2 things. One is based on Him, to believe on Him, based on the judgment days, and this is important. The judgment days, when you believe on it, you can forgive the people. Because when you don't got your justice in this world, your belief in the judgment days lead you to believe that your justice will be in the next day, so you can forgive anyone. You don't need to revenge. And the 3rd one, don't lie, don't steal, don't kill the people. This is the good values in our life. This is the religion. God says, La ikraha fi din. The kind of forcing the people, the kind of pushing the people to do anything is not exist in the religion, which means politics and leading the country have nothing to do with the religion except the values. You took your values from religion. The rest is we as a human being should put it. Thank you.
Thank you, Khaled. We're going to go in 1 minute to questions from the audience, but first, Pnina, did you want to say a word?
I'll just say that in Israel, politics and religion are, co-joined. You can't, because you have religious parties that are officially religious parties, and they're promoting whatever religious faction they represent. So, unlike, let's say, in the United States, where you can sort of say you have a separation, even though even here it's not really working out, I think. But in Israel it's official. It's not, we don't even pretend to separate church and state. And we have official institutions that are religious, Jewish, religious, Orthodox. Like, you can't get married, divorced, or buried in Israel without going through the Orthodox rabbinate, just for example. So, yeah, it's a very, religion and politics in Israel are very much, one and the same.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for sending in questions. Is the mic working?
Take it off.
Hello. Okay, thank you for sending in very good questions. There's no way we're going to be able to get to all of them, but I will try to be a little crueler than you and asking people to keep a little bit short, only because there really are very good questions. So I've tried to divide them up into questions that relate to specifically to people, and then some that are on categories that I think all will be interested in. Let me start with what I think is the toughest question, but maybe the easiest question, and it hopefully fairly short answers, but it relates to all of you. Have you ever been accused by your communities of being traitors? And how do you respond? Which one? Which one? Whoever wants to start.
I think to me, this... no, I'm Khaled Awwad. I'm the son of Awwad's family. My family is a count nowadays around 23,000 people. I spent part of my life in the Israel jail. I am a son of a refugee Palestinian family for 2 times. I'm a brother of Shaheed, what we call it Shaheed. I lost my brother Yusuf in 2000. I lost my brother Said in 2002. My son Muayyad had been shooting by the Israel army in 2004, and he's handicapped. So all this history is give me the legitimacy to say and to express myself and to say my opinion in front of all the people. Actually, the exist of me inside the peace organization is protect other people and give space to other Palestinian people to express themselves without being afraid. So, and the second thing is, I don't think that the Palestinian people kill those who believe in peace. Yes, maybe these days it's difficult to talk about peace, but I will continue to say and talk. But no one can stand in front of this strong national identity that I have, that gave me the legitimacy to do what I'm doing.
Yes, but it not necessarily my religious community. I mean, my religious community as well, but definitely in the breaking the silence context, also those liberal Israelis are the normative people to talk about peace and end of occupation, and in some ways, those attacks have been much more challenging. Not necessarily me personally, I don't tend to take it too seriously, but definitely to the state of democracy in Israel. But it is important for me to counter it that I send my children to a religious right-wing education, and I love their teachers who think the opposite of me and probably think that I'm a traitor, but really take care of my children and love them. And educate them to the best of their ability. And I would feel wrong to come here and to just, or go anywhere and to just challenge my community when I am aware of the fact that, that the communities are complicated things, and that there's an incredible amount of disagreement between us, but an incredible amount of love and generosity in my community, which is also very important for me to state in this context.
That's good I'm answering last because I was going to say no, and then I remembered that twice, yes. I just remembered there were two things I did that, there were articles about me. One in Atal Midah, it's like this right wing, I don't know if it still exists or if it's defunct, but they wrote out that I was a terror supporter. And and this was like right in the beginning of my activism. I was like shocked and scared. I didn't know where it came from. But I invited this Lochamim LaShalom, Combatants for Peace, to screen their movie for a group. And so they wrote me up for being a terrorist activist. A terror supporter, and also I took a group of Haredi media people to East Jerusalem, and I got written up for that also. They said that I took money from the NIF, and it wasn't true. Now it is, but then it wasn't. I was like, no, I do this for free. So if they want to pay me, that's great. I have, but I have to say that it's less significant than like being a Haredi feminist. Then you really get called a traitor in my community. So
I'm resisting the temptation to ask all of you to elaborate on that one question because it's very rich, but I'm going to go on to another question, and the person will have to forgive me because I'm going to elaborate on the question. It was originally intended for Khaled, but I think it could apply to others as well. It says, you emphasize the human connection and humanity between Israelis and Palestinians, innocents who are killed on both sides. What would you tell Palestinians and pro-Palestinian students on college campuses, I presume here, who view everything through the lens of victim and perpetrator? And what would you tell them now, especially if they don't live in the region? But I would like to add to this, that I, as an American Jew who lives in Israel, but I have a lot of connection with college campuses, I see the exact same problem. And I do think it's a problem among many American Jews who say that the Jewish Israelis are the only victim and the other side is the perpetrator. So I'm going to start with you, but I think I will also extend this to Pnina and Mikhael.
I know that this is happened everywhere. A Jewish family from Australia, they came to visit me years ago in my center, in my land, in Hebron, and they bring their two kids, with them. And they tell me how the life of their two kids in Australia at school is very difficult because the other people in their classes, they attack them all the time just because they are Jewish, and the other people in the class, they support the Palestinian people. When I hear the story, when I hear the kids, it moved me a lot emotionally because I feel that those kids are a victim of what's happened between us. For me, I think on the Holy Land there are two people. Palestinian people. I'm a Palestinian. I belong to that land. It's my homeland. At the same time, I know we have another people living in the same place, whatever they call them, the Jewish people, the Zionist people, the Israel people, as mentioned in my Holy Quran, who tell us the story, God tell us the story, the whole story of the sons of Israel, start from Abraham, Yitzchak, Jacob, the story of Yosef, the migration of Jacob and his sons following Yosef to Egypt, entering to Egypt as respectful people, and ended after 350 years or 400 years as slaves under the Pharaoh nation, sending Moses to save them and to bring them out of Egypt. 40 years of education, treat them to be back free people, bringing them back or sending them back with Joshua ben Nun to the Holy Land. King David, King Solomon, Beit HaMikdash, Aron HaKodesh, it's all mentioned in our Holy Quran, and it's all a witness of the belong of the sons of Israel to the Holy Land. So we both, it's the homeland of both of us, and it's one of two. Oh, we continue. Disaccept the belong of the other one and want the whole place to us. Or we accept the belong of both of us to the Holy Land. It's one of two. Continue fighting each other, killing each other, killing the happiness, destroying the future of each other, or a moment of the quiet and accepting each other and find the way how we can live together in peace on the Holy Land. There's no other choice.
Maybe I'll take one of you to answer that, just in the interest so we can get more questions in. What would you say to Americans or anybody, any Jewish people who are not in the region, if they see themselves as the only victim?
What would I say to Americans? Why are you a victim? You live here.
Who see Jews in Israel, or Jews in general, as the only victim?
I don't know. The truth is, I don't think of things. It's more of a power thing than who's the victim to me, like who has more power. I think, yeah, on October 7th, I felt like a victim, and rightfully so. I mean, it didn't happen to me, but I lived there, so. You know, even coming here now and thinking of my kids being in Israel, it's just crazy. Like, I have no control. Just because I'm there, nothing's going to change if something bad happens. But there's this, like, we're at war. There's something very, it's fearful. But it's not a matter of being a victim. We're not victims. We have a sovereign state. We have bitter enemies, whether we earned it or not, but that's a fact. I personally don't think that any side is, you know, perfect in this conflict. I don't think in any conflict ever any side was perfect. So I also don't think we're the worst ever, but it doesn't matter. We're here now, and we should be doing our best, not our worst.
Okay, now I'm going to go to a question that I think is on many people's minds in the region anyway. You know, the war in Gaza seems unprecedented in the history of this conflict. It's very extreme. Does it reshape your approach to peace building, or does it reinforce the reasons why you have been involved in peace work all these years, and what makes you want to continue doing peace building and democracy strengthening like before? Or has anybody, I mean, this is the term for people who don't know, you know, for the first few months after this happened, many people who were involved in peace work said, oh, I have realized that it's impossible, that all the critics were right, the other side, we can't work with them. All this peace stuff, it's not going to work. So which direction, if any, have you taken? And anybody can answer this.
Listen, we are not going to give Hamas to win us. We will continue work and believe in peace because there is no other choice. It's peace or death. This is the choice, and we choose the life. Yes, I'm very sad that with what's happened on the 7th of October, and let me say it in front of all of you, I condemn what's happened by Hamas. Although that the people of Gaza is living in a big prison and we suffer a lot, but that's not a reason to behave like this. And those who behave like this, it's not in the name of the national issues of Palestine. It's another agenda that have nothing with Palestine. Palestine is a small thing on their agenda. So I condemn them. I think what they do is an ugly thing, and it's not in the benefit of the Palestinian people. The Israel reaction also is an unhuman reaction. Sorry to say that, but it's an unhuman reaction. They should not react like this. The first days, the first month when this happened, I have groups from both sides. I have Israel participant, Jewish Israel participant. In my initiative, I have Palestinian participant. And the first month and the first 2 months, we stopped the groups, the joint groups between both sides, because the people, the day after the 7th of October, emotionally, they became very angry and they act in a bad way. And I tried not to allow them to damage all what we built during the 10 years. So for that, I said to all of them, anyone who feels angry, take a step back, be quiet, stay with yourself, wait months, 2 months, and when you feel that you have the needing to meet with your partners, come, you will come, you're still one of us. I face this, I close all the groups. I've seen fighting inside the groups. I've seen blaming each other, Palestinian and Israel, when they've seen the picture. But for me, they're all human beings. This reaction is a normal reaction. It's how we control this reaction, how we help the people not to destroy all what they built. And let me be a witness of one thing. I believe it deeply on it, that the majority of the Palestinian and the Israel people in the Holy Land, they are good people. They are not bad. Yes, sometimes they emotionally move to this side or this side, but in general and in normal situation, they all seek to live in peace. They want to live in peace. They are ready more than anyone else to live with each other in peace. But we have extreme groups here and there, and their voices is very high. And the peace people voice is very quiet, because we are not people who look to fight anyone. We are not people who don't care about the life of the people, the suffering of the people. We care about these things. Because of this, we are more light. We try to give a chance to the people to be changed and to get down. So we will continue. I will continue, and we will not give up. Thank you.
So I agree, of course, with everything Khaled just said. It is important for me to say, as a Jewish voice here on panel, especially after the things that were said, that the dehumanization of the other happening in our society post the 7th of October is both terrible and tragic in its own right, and also a dehumanization ultimately of ourselves. The limits of our empathy, wars are always pose a challenge to sort of the limits of limits of empathy. But I think at this point we must recognize that not as just a given, but as a deep societal problem. The fact that even suggesting an empathy with the pain and suffering of Palestinians in Gaza, also to be important to say, also in the West Bank in the last 6 months, the fact that lack of empathy towards Palestinians, or empathy towards Palestinians, is perceived as somehow less loyalty to our people, I think is a tremendous civic and moral challenge that will take us, sadly, many years to overcome. And there, I think the role of people of faith should play important role. I will just say quickly about that word faith that you asked before, that when I translate Smolemuni to English, I say faithful left, and somebody told me recently, but that sounds Protestant, and I answered that everything in English sounds Protestant to me. So regarding Gaza, I do think the role of empathy, of humility, of compassion is more crucial than ever. In terms of what's changed for me, or at least altered, or at least strengthened, is the commitment to the binational understanding of the region is much more important. That's not to talk necessarily about a specific solution. One can manifest the notion of the fact that there are two peoples living in the region in many different ways. But I think the liberal model of peace has always been, well, there are those extremists who want everything, but there are we who concede. So they're radical, but we're pragmatic and we concede. We don't do everything we want. The problem is that everything we want adheres to the radical model of we want everything on our own. And every time something breaks apart, we resort to the uncompromising model, which is that we want everything on our own. So the concession model of, well, we wish we had the whole land of Israel, but we need to concede in order to give two states, and that concession is painful, and all of this language that we understood, I think, is ultimately a very dangerous ethical model and a dangerous political model, because it means that every time something bad happens, then we resort to the position of lack of concession, and lack of concession means we want to be the only people here. So from my perspective, I think the future of the region, what we should want, what we should desire, is for two people to live peacefully and freely on the land, and conceding is less than that. But the goal, the desire, what we should dream of, is not being in the region on our own, but being in the region alongside others. I think that is our primary ethical and political agenda of people who care about peace in the region should be to articulate and focus on that primarily. So it's not about concessions, it's not about us being pragmatic and them being radical, but rather a radical desire for a binational understanding of the region, and a love for that fact.
I want to leave time for one last question, which segues on what we were all talking about here, and this is combining a couple of the questions. So we had a couple of questions, and I think this is a fitting end, about what kind of political framework can help resolve the conflict, and one of them is it possible to have a single state with, rather than two-state solution with one land and two people, and my personal favorite, a land for all has proposed. a new two-state confederation peace model, an agreement where Israeli settlers in the West Bank would remain in their communities, vote in Israel as an Israeli citizen, but become Israeli citizens, become permanent residents of the state of Palestine, and similarly Palestinians, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think what it would take to have such a proposal succeed by the settler community? But I think that what we're really asking is, can you weigh in on one state that includes both, two states in a more organic, cooperative partnership with greater flexibility and access for both sides to all sides, or the old two-state model? Is there a political framework that you can imagine resolving this conflict? And we'll have to keep it fairly short. I know. No, I would stay here for another 2 hours.
Okay, shortly. First of all, I am with the solution of land for all. I love this. I support this also. But I know that it cannot happen without being divorced from each other. We cannot go to the one-state solution or to the land for all, which is the best solution and the only solution in my eyes. We don't have another solution. But to go to this place, we need to give the independent feeling to both people. The Palestinian people should feel that they are free and they choose this direction from a free position, from a free place. If we bring this from us and they try to force them, they will refuse it. So I believe that we cannot divide the Holy Land. We should open it for all of us. We should all lead there. One leadership or two leadership that have a one joint leadership. I don't know, but this is what I believe.
Be like Khaled, concise.
I won't sit Shiva for any solution that has equality in it. So any model in which everybody is free and independent, I'd be happy with. That being said, I very much agree with Khaled in the point that any framework has to go through Palestinian independence, and any Palestinian independence, no matter if it ends up in anything else, needs to go through the evacuation of settlements. And that is important for me to say because we sometimes talk about the inability to evacuate settlements, and what we're saying is we're putting Palestinian current suffering second place to a theoretical future suffering of settlers being evacuated from their homes. So at this point, settlements are the most primary mechanism of dispossession of land in the West Bank. And unless we can magically turn that opposite, the process for any lived situation of equality, be it two states or confederation or binationalism, all models which I would be happy with as long as we have, as Israelis have, an ability to organize collectively, has to go through the understanding that we also need to pay material prices along the way, and not only organize all of reality in a way that we don't pay any price to somehow allow for Palestinian cohabitation with us.
I'm actually on record for supporting that solution, even when I was really a two-stater, because they asked me to do an interview. It was the first interview I ever did in my life on the subject. It was in Haaretz. Judy Moles did it. So I didn't know anything about it at the time, but I was like, whatever works, I'm happy with anything, and that's true today as well. Yeah, pretty much whatever works and makes people happy, I'm good to go.
Before I end, I need to say a logistical announcement, which is, could the fellows of the Institute please hang behind for a photo? Could alumni of the Summer Institute please hang behind for a photo? Could the panelists please hang behind for a photo? Thank you. Okay. I had to say that because otherwise everyone would disappear. Far more importantly, thank you so much to Dr. Dahlia Scheindlin for handling this impossible task of questions. I want to also please... Dahlia has just come out with a new book about the entire history of Israeli democracy, which is highly, highly recommended. The entire history of Israeli democracy in a single volume. The Crooked Timber of Democracy in Israel. It's superb and a must read. And thank you so much to Khaled Awwad. Thank you, Mikhael Manekin. Thank you, Pnina Pfeuffer, for bravely sharing your stories, your intelligence, and your plans for the future. And thank you all of us for being with us tonight. Good night, everybody. Thank you.